Yo, faster with it, faster with it.
Yo, I'm
Aloysius, and welcome to
Harbor
Harbor Tour.
All right, look, I'm Aloysius, and welcome to today's video. Look, before we get into it, I just need to ask a huge favor. Please do me an absolute solid and click that subscribe button, And also, if you like the bell icon and the like, I don't really care. What I really need is subscribers right now. And if you can, watch the whole video. That's pretty helpful to me too. All right, well with that, let's get this video on the leper colony of Hawaii, a really fun and happy, joyous kind of video, underway. The story, really doesn't involve Saint Damien until about the middle of the tale. Really, the story begins with Captain Cook and his arrival on Hawaii, his quote-unquote discovery, though Hawaii was actually discovered by the Polynesians who settled on Hawaii and became the people of Hawaii. It was Captain James Cook who introduced Hawaii to Europe and introduced Europe and all of its terrifying shit to Hawaii. As far as I can tell, the dude was not a good guy. And he definitely was killed by his own hubris. There are a lot of different versions of Captain James Cook's death that are told throughout the history books. However, I will say there's some that are more believable than the others, and Captain James Cook was definitely the aggressor. Here's what I have pieced together. Captain James Cook first arrived in Hawaii in 1778. When he arrived there, the people of Hawaii were excited by the use of iron. Captain James Cook and his sailors took advantage of that by trying to pull some Cortez shit. Basically, they were walking around like they were gods, and, the sailors were apparently giving iron, nails, to the women of Hawaii in exchange for sex. They left. It was believed by the Hawaiian people at that time that they were just visited by Lono, a Hawaiian deity, a fertility god. And in 1779, on the way back, they stopped there again, and it just so happens to be at a Lono fertility festival. He stops in, he's frolicking, he's trying to pull the whole, I'm Cortez, I'm a god, worship me thing. I think they catch on to him pretty darn quick when one of his men dies, and the people discover, hey, this is a mortal just like us. And then they're like, this dude's taking advantage of us. He's a real dick. He's threatening them with rifles, and they're picking up rocks, saying, get the fuck out of here, dude. So he leaves. But his ship breaks. The ship has to turn around and ends up right in the back in the same spot. Hostilities have been growing and growing because Captain James Cook took advantage of people, and they realized that he was taking advantage of them. And just as I'm sure anybody who's watching this video who has realized that somebody's, actually just being a giant jerk, responded. They stole one of his boats, which is, hey. He starts screaming and yelling, and well, you steal from me, I'll steal from you. I'm going to take your king. And he walks into the chief's palace, king's palace, and he walks out with the king in hand. Now, the king, isn't really as aware of this as the people that the sailors were with, it seems, and is willing to go along with Captain Cook, not understanding the danger that he was in, and obviously you don't want to get on a ship with a bunch of diseased sailors. I mean, the moment a European arrived in America, smallpox ripped all the way up across the United States and South America and all over the mainland. I imagine a very similar event had happened on Hawaii already. He's screaming at these men. The chief, the king, realizes, oh no, this dude's actually a really bad guy, and gets away from him. he orders his ship to fire on the people of Honolulu, and they kill him. They kill him, and good riddance to bad rubbish. But what James Cook has just done is he's introduced Hawaii to the horrors of Europe, and it's not going to stop there. It's going to get worse and worse and worse. I hate European colonialism. Between 1778 and 1835, the population of Hawaii has dropped to 1/4 of its size, from 683,000, a healthy Hawaiian population, to 150,000. And disease is greatly responsible for the loss of so much life. Now, leprosy wasn't diagnosed in Hawaii until 1835. Up to that point, it's been every disease, just running rampant on this small population of people. Small cases of leprosy, but none of it gets diagnosed. So the incubation period of leprosy is incredibly long. It takes years for somebody to catch leprosy to begin to show signs of leprosy. As I tell this story, it's so easy for me to just go into using the word lepers. And it doesn't seem wrong, right? Lepers. They're people with leprosy. It's a dehumanizing word, especially because of how it's used in the Bible. Leper in the Bible literally means unclean. Every time, almost every quote you find of leprosy in the Bible, it's talking unclean. Dude's clothes are unwashed, and that's why he's got leprosy. He's got to walk around without shoes because he's got leprosy. Can't live in a house because he's got leprosy. He's unclean. And that's really not what leprosy is about, yo. Like, leprosy, the horror of leprosy is that it kills your nerves. It just turns them off. Just somehow it hits something in your brain or something in your body that'll just turn off your nerves so that you no longer feel pain. So that one day you're sitting there, you're chopping onions or chopping carrots really, and you're going down, and suddenly you're not at the carrot anymore. You're now at your fingertips, and you don't know. In fact, most people who have suffered long-term leprosy don't have all of their digits. It's very important that we remember that these are human beings. Now it's getting bad on Hawaii. Like, leprosy is now running rampant, and it's the most noticeable disease. Like, it has become prevalent, and there are no easy solutions. In 1855, King Kamehameha IV, which, by the way, just saying, that's a dope name. King Kamehameha IV has to make a difficult decision. He's being advised by the medical branches that he's constructed. They're being advised that they need to do something about the lepers. See? So easy to fall into that word. They need to do something about leprosy, and that the leprosy is running rampant, and that if it's not stopped, it's going to take out the entire population. And so they send out a census man at first, a census man who's secretly tasked with finding out how many people across Hawaii have leprosy. And once it's discovered, and once they have a list of all of the people with leprosy, they pass the Leprosy Act, which gives the okay to imprison people with a disease. And the Polynesian people, the Samoans, are like, dude, this is not us. This is not what we're about. Let us be with our family. Let us be with the sick. I mean, and it's very difficult. People don't want to leave their families. People don't want to say goodbye to their families. And a lot of people run and hide. But the authorities are hunting for these lepers. There are a lot of places to hide in Hawaii. Caves, forests, outskirts of towns. People with leprosy are trying it all, and their families are assisting them. They don't want what's about to happen to their family and loved ones. There's one place in particular, a place in Hawaii where two mountains ridges meet, and create this like almost valley canyon. It's called the Kalaupapa Valley. And to this day, it seems they have a problem with people who are on the outskirts of society trying to hide there. But it becomes a secret leper colony. And years and years after my story here ends, the story I'm telling ends with Saint Damien. After Saint Damien, after the fall of Hawaiian independence, and with the introduction of colonial rule, there is a rebellion between the leper colony and this new colonial force, and it is bloody and it is brutal, and it is not the story I'm telling today. Getting back on track, King Kamehameha IV's successor, King Kamehameha V, and his medical, organization, the medical group that is dealing with leprosy, begin hunting for a location on Hawaii that will essentially work as Alcatraz, right? They're looking for a new Alcatraz, a place that will keep the people with leprosy stuck there. And they find it. And it's terrifying. I'm going to show you what this place looks like. So this is the Kalaupapa Peninsula on the island of Molokai. Pretty terrifying, right? Well, it kind of is. You see, it's completely surrounded by that cliff up there. They've constructed buildings on this spot, but it wasn't really used for anything previous to that I can find. It was just completely surrounded by water and mountains, and there was no escape. The Kalaupapa leper colony was a dehumanizing place. I've read many accounts of people from that period who spoke of it. It seems as though most of the boats that were tasked with taking people infected with leprosy to the Kalaupapa colony would not actually get close to the land. Sailors are, often described as pushing people off the boat when they get close enough to swim yourself. The medical facilities are also incredibly lacking. There are a lot of accounts of people saying doctors just aren't coming. There are no nurses, no doctors most days. They don't even have enough water or supplies to be able to treat any of the medical maladies that somebody is going to get naturally that you're going to have to go to the hospital for. They don't even have enough water to be able to wash the wounds of the lepers. And the doctors refuse to touch the lepers in any capacity. Not to mention the fact that these are small children being grabbed away from their loved ones, their mothers, their fathers, their family, and being tossed onto an island with random people who they have no connection to. Random people also being pulled away from their loved ones. This is dehumanizing. And now there's just a society of perfect strangers being forced to mingle. The first group of lepers were, I believe it was 100 people originally arrived on Kalaupapa the day it opened. I know for sure there was 1,800 at one moment in time. I've read accounts that bring it up as far as 8,000 people living on Kalaupapa. Now, I'm not sure the exact number because it does seem to vary quite a bit, and I haven't been able to find like an official census of it. It's just funny because it all started with a census, didn't it? This is a dehumanizing place. And Saint Damien later describes it. I'm going to save his description for now. Let's talk about the man who would become Saint Damien. Father Damian wasn't originally Father Damien. He was born Joseph de Veuster. He was born to a merchant and a farmer. His father owned a farm, and Saint Damien would drop out of school at the age of 13 to help his father on his farm. Saint Damien was a rebellious kid. He was known for hitching rides on the back of wagons. He would laugh and giggle and make things light. The people who were teaching him to be a priest were making note he's probably not going to be able to hack it as a priest. He's immature, he's laughing, he's carrying on, he's not taking anything too seriously, which good for him. He's got a rebellious edge to him that makes him very fun. In fact, he wasn't even expected to be a priest, and he wasn't going to be going to Hawaii. His older brother, the only reason why the church continued to have Damian with them was because they respected his older brother so much. His older brother was supposed to go to Honolulu. Saint Damien, Father Damian, who would become father and then later saint, wanted specifically to be a missionary. And when they asked him where he would like to be a missionary at, he said, well, I would love to go and meet the Native American population somewhere in the United States, somewhere in, North America. And I would love to get to know their cultures and to be able to see the way they live and to be able to interact with them. And they were like, see their culture? No, you're supposed to be like forcing your culture on them, man. That's not what it's about. And they weren't even they weren't planning on making him a missionary because, again, it was clear he wasn't in it for the reasons they wanted him to be in it for, which again makes him so freaking cool. You see why I'm making this video? I have a lot of respect for this dude because this dude, he's marching to the beat of his own drums and he does an amazing good, but it's because of his heart and because of his soul. The institution is kind of blocking him the whole way, and he's having none of that. He's the kind of dude who's like, you know what? Forget you, institution. I'm doing this. And you'll see this later on when he arrives at the leper colony, because he really had to trick them into being able to get there. So his brother is set to go to Honolulu and Hawaii and to be a missionary of those places. However, suddenly his brother gets sick and he goes to the authorities, these, upper church people. He explains to them, look, my brother's sick. He can't travel. Send me. I'll go. I'll go to Hawaii. And the first thing he does when they say yes is he runs into his sick brother's room screaming, dude, I'm going to Hawaii. And he leaves. He goes off to Hawaii. And he's supposed to be one of the priests, one of the Catholic priests for all of Hawaii. He quickly begins to hear people telling him of Kalaupapa. The church eventually agrees that he can go and visit. And they give him very strict rules. He's not to accept any of their fruit. He is not to allow them to touch him. He is supposed to keep his distance. He is given so many rules. So they told him he could stay as long as his devotion dictates, which they thought meant after a couple of days, you're free to go. You don't have to stay there at all. I mean, it's pretty clear the doctors, the nurses, all of these people are not going to Kalaupapa. It's pretty much an abandoned society. And as we'll see later from some of his descriptions, which I'm gonna hold off on, to him, I think that meant these people need you. And they did. They truly did need somebody to just give them a little love and structure and to tell them it was going to be okay. And to show them that it was okay. That they are human and they are loved regardless of the fact that they have a disease they have no control over. But he essentially tricked the church, and as far as I can tell, he never left Kalaupapa. It's hard to say because he wasn't diagnosed with leprosy until 16 years after his arrival there. Father Damien has gone to the leper colony. He goes by boat. When he gets to the church, he doesn't have a place to stay. That night, he eats fruit that a local leper gave him. And he begins to look at the church and inspect it. And he plans, as a young man, he worked on a farm. And he was taught how to construct and how to build. And he plans to build up and build himself a rectory, and he is not going anywhere. And he sleeps under a tree that day. And in fact, his grave is under this tree. In fact, they took his corpse and sent it back to Belgium. But when he became canonized by the last pope, they brought his corpse back, his ashes, his remains back, but not to that tree, not to that exact location. Instead, he's at a more accessible location in Honolulu, his relic. So when Father Damien arrived, and I apologize, I for some reason got into a tangent about his death when I'm just at his arrival, but it stays. So when he arrived, he immediately accepted fruit. He went and slept under this tree. And the next day, he starts and goes and visits all of these lepers. And what he finds is a lot of people who are untreated with their wounds, particularly a little girl who has worms, maggots crawling in her wounds. And he immediately begins to clean it and dress it. He also is eating off of plates that the people suffering from leprosy offer him. And, as he establishes himself there, he picks up a habit of smoking a pipe. The reason why he picks up a habit of smoking a pipe is because he didn't want them to know the discomfort he had with the smell of their wounds. And he didn't want to embarrass them, so he just started smoking a tobacco pipe. He also, he discovered when he got there, there was a lot of, depravity that was occurring. And people who really were, not really about depraved lifestyles, feeling the only way they could have community at that moment was it was the closest thing they could find to family. But Saint Damien offered a different option. He built up the church, and he started holding mass. He had an organ player, but his organ players didn't have enough fingers. Remember when I was talking about that chopping carrots way earlier, and I said I'd be back to it? Well, here it is. There weren't enough fingers on the organ player. And so when Damien was like, why is the organ not going right? He goes, oh, you don't have enough fingers. See, there's the Saint Damien wit, man. And, so they'd have two people playing the organ. The atmosphere on Kalaupapa completely changes because it doesn't matter that they're not getting medical treatment. He's there to give it. He starts getting them to farm their own sweet potatoes because one of the problems was they weren't really sending enough food for everybody. It was limited. It was kind of like, well, here's some and go forage or something. And so he has them making, and growing sweet potatoes. And Saint Damien brought humanity. Colonialism, what's crazy is the more I researched into the stuff that happened before Saint Damien, the more it's become clear this story is about colonialism. It is. It's about the unintentional, unintended, and, in the case of Captain Cook, we've all read The Bounty, or I have. I might do a video on The Bounty if you haven't. Let me know in the comments if you want a video on The Bounty, because that's one of my favorite horrific tales of, colonialism. But, the sailors, obviously, they were just glad they found a group of Polynesian people who hadn't discovered that they were assholes yet, but everything else, it's the unforeseen consequences of colonialism. But Father Damien, he wasn't a part of that. He was a rebel, man. He was, he's a dude like me, wearing this because somebody used this as an insult at me this summer, And so now I'm rocking it, I'm making it look good. He's the antithesis of colonialism. He's the man who can stand up and say, you know what? I'm really not about what's happening here. And you know what? I'm going to put my life at risk, and I'm going to do the right thing. Leprosy's gone. This is now a state park, which I very, very, very much, I would love. This is one of the places I would like to see before I die. I would like to go stand in the church that Saint Damien built. Literally, he built the rectory. I think the church is already built. I would like to see this place. It is very tough to get to. In fact, the reason why they don't have his remains there is because of that. I would also like to take a tour there. They apparently have Saint Damien tours. And I know, I'm Haunted Harbor Tours. I know you're expecting me to talk about the ghosts of Kalaupapa. And I have read several accounts of ghosts on Kalaupapa. However, I am not going to do that. Not for this one. This one deserves a little more respect. Not often that you'll hear me, a ghost hunter and ghost tour guide, saying that. However, I ain't, unless I have, firsthand actual account, I ain't reporting on these ghosts. Not this one. If you have enjoyed this, if you have watched to this whole end, the only reason I discovered Saint Damien, this was the first spot that I found it. And it's probably one of my favorite books on plagues. It's called Get Well Soon. It's by Jennifer Wright, and it was what turned me on to this. Now, I did a lot of research, also, but I've had it sitting here just for my closing. I highly recommend this book. I have read a lot of books on diseases of human history, but Jennifer Wright's has a voice that's very similar to my own, and out of all of the histories of disease, it's my favorite. And I highly recommend, if you have enjoyed the kind of content I produce, pick up this book. And, I don't know her. It's just one of my favorite books. So with that, I hope you enjoyed yourselves. If you did, please hit subscribe. Please. It's 2020. The world's crazy. I own a business that depends on large groups. I'm scared. So hit subscribe and definitely, comment and like. If you can, like would really help me. And it would help you because that'll help me make more videos. Yeah, I got some cool stuff coming up. I'm not gonna make any more promises, right? I've been promising Goya for months now. Anyway, catch you later. One final thought. I was about to publish, but one final thought. What really impressed me was that Saint Damien was informed that he had leprosy. I don't know if it was a while after he already knew or if he was just finding out, but he said, "Wonderful. I'm so glad I can share the disease of my parish." What a fucking good guy. Really, what a good guy. Standing up, doing the right thing. What a good dude. Peace.